Well, good morning, my friend, and welcome to the Pastor's Podcast. Good to have you with me on this Monday morning as we get along in the week. Great start to our not to our conference, but to our campaign this week, and looking forward to what God's going to do in the next 3 weeks. God gave us a great attendance, several souls saved. And that's always an exciting thing. And looking forward to many more weeks, 3 more weeks, a push of us doing our best for God. How we've got to do our best. Let's make sure, church, let's stay busy. And boy, several souls saved and many baptized, many visitors, close to 700 in attendance and all the services that we had yesterday. And that's a good way to start it out. And I was excited about that, seeing God do something great and mighty. Always good to watch the Lord work in the church. And boy, you need to get involved in your church wherever you are. God always has something special planned. We just have to stay busy doing that. Well, today let's talk about Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 15. Scripture says, "Shout against her round about. She hath given her hand, her foundations are fallen. Her walls are thrown down, for it is the vengeance of the Lord. Take vengeance upon her, as she hath done, do unto her." Now, many people who have changed said they will never change. I'll never change. But their goal and desire was great, but they did not keep the change from happening. Throughout you have to understand, I've just watched church throughout my ministry. I've seen men who once stood firmly for the truth change their whole ministry to become something different. Now, I've watched these men who once desired to start churches quit the ministry for money, worldly living, and even becoming atheist. Now, if you'd asked these men when they were young if they would end up what they're presently doing, every one of them would have said, Adam would have said, "No, never." But these men that I have seen change are like the thousands of people who start right but end up wrong. Now, how do people start right and end up wrong? Well, God shows us how in his prophecy against Babylon. Babylon was a tool in God's hand that became the mightiest nation in the world, but they are now just a history lesson of what they used to be. Oh, so many men of God and believers are history lessons of what they used to be and what sin and worldliness did to them. Now, I want to share 3 steps people take that lead to change. The first, they change their direction. So notice that Babylon hath given her hand. In other words, she gave her hand, which means she changed her direction from God to something else. Change always starts with a directional change. Directional changes are not positional changes, but directional changes always change position. You change your direction of what you once used to do to look more like others just because you want to be accepted. Directional changes often happen because of a sincere desire likely to help people or to win people to Christ, but it always leads to a positional change. Directional changes always start with your friendships. It starts by yoking up with people who are not like you, or by reading their books, reading books of people who are not directionally right. And your direction changes because of those you let to influence you. Whoever you give your hand to in friendship is the direction you'll go. My friend, you will never change positionally if you don't give your hand to a person who is directionally wrong. It always starts with a friend. It's been that way for years. The friends have always led to someone changing. Second, directional changes always lead to a breakdown of standards. Before the foundations were fallen, the walls were thrown down. So once you change your direction, you're going to justify changing the standards. The music begins to change. The dress standards begin to be lowered, and before long, you will see that what you once used to believe has changed. You see, that directional change always leads to the breakdown of the walls of standards that you set up to keep you from the world. So it starts directionally, then it leads to a breakdown of standards, and then third, the breakdown of the wall of standards leads to the foundations being destroyed. See, once you let down your standards, you've exposed your doctrine to the wrong influences. And this is what people don't understand. I have yet to see someone let down their ecclesiastical and their personal standards and it not affect their doctrinal positions. Every time, eventually it comes down to doctrine. Now, all starts with direction. So when you give your hand to fellowship, it'll always determine your direction. Protect your direction. If you protect direction, you protect yourself against change. If you separate from people when their direction changes, you'll never see your wall of standards crumble, and the foundational directional positions will not change. I cannot tell you how this truth has salvaged me throughout the years. I was taught this principle by my pastor, Dr. Jack Hiles, who taught me that direction is everything. At the time, I didn't understand it, but now at 57 years of age, I do. And my friend, I'm not saying that we need to isolate ourselves from everybody, but when someone directionally changes, even though they believe like us, they're headed a different way. That's when you got to pull back. I remember years ago, I was preaching for a man. I won't say who he is, but I was preaching for him, and I was preaching with him with another good man. And after we're done preaching, we're sitting in the airport, and the man I was preaching with said, he says, "You think you're going to come back and preach for this guy?" I said, "Nah." I said, "He runs with too many different people." I said, "He's all over the place." I said, "I think his direction has changed." This man said, "I agree with you." Now, what's interesting is this. I was dead right. Today, that man he's got rock and roll in his services. Now, get this. Now, this is a guy who had Alan Dominic come preach. This is a guy that was avid and a soul winner, but now he's gone the way of the world. And I don't think he's an evil man. I don't think he's a bad man, but I know that he's compromised. And for what? For the sake of what? My friend, it always comes down to directional changes every time. I've watched it for years, and I'm not. Please understand this. I'm not the line that measures things, but I've watched this for years. When men stopped having me, when I would go there every year, and they stopped having me, it never fails. When they stopped having me, about 5-7 years later, they're totally gone off a different way. Now, why was it that they stopped having me? Because I was not going the same direction that they were going. They changed their direction, and then they said, "I can't have this guy. Something about him, he's too strong." Now, my friend, I'm telling you right now, you be careful about the directional changes. Watch the books you read, the friends you run with. You keep your direction right, then you'll keep the wall of standards up. If you keep the wall of standards up, you protect the foundations. If we don't, how do the foundations get destroyed? We put our hand out and we start joining up with people that we should not join up with. And that allows the standards to drop. And before long, the walls have been broken down, that the foundations are destroyed, and we become completely different people than what we used to be. Let's be careful. Let's watch who we run with. Let's watch our direction. And if we do that, I will tell you this, we can keep moving forward for the Lord, standing for right, doing what we're supposed to do, because we've kept everything in its place. Well, my friend, I hope this is a great help to you today. Now, let's remember today, be good to everyone. Everyone's having a tough time. Have a great day.